The Golden Harvest had once been a bustling diner, a place where families gathered, friends laughed, and life felt simple. But in 2025, it was a shadow of its former self. Its neon sign flickered like it was barely clinging to life, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and old vinyl. Lucy Ramirez, the waitress, moved through the narrow aisles with practiced ease, her long brown hair tied into a neat ponytail, her apron slightly stained from the morning rush. At 24, she had learned to read people. Her small-town diner had seen every kind of guest imaginable, from cheerful regulars to frustrated strangers, but today, something felt different. It was 2:52 p.m. on a Wednesday when the bell above the door jingled softly. Lucy glanced up and froze. A man in his mid-40s had entered, the kind of man who didn't need to announce his presence to be noticed. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit, polished black shoes that reflected the dim diner lights, and a watch that whispered wealth with every subtle tick. But it wasn't just his clothes, it was his presence, calm and deliberate, almost serene, as if he could control the rhythm of the room with a single breath. Lucy approached him with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Table for one?" He nodded, his deep brown eyes scanning the diner for a moment, before settling on the booth by the window. "Yes, please, near the sunlight." As he sat, Lucy noticed the subtle way he took in every detail: the chipped paint on the walls, the faded family photos behind the counter, the little imperfections that made the diner what it was. There was a quiet appreciation in his gaze, not judgment. He opened the menu slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the ritual of choice itself. Lucy retreated to the counter, her mind buzzing. She had waited on her share of wealthy clients, and they all shared a common pattern: expensive orders, subtle demands, and a quiet expectation that they were untouchable. But this man, he seemed different. When she returned to the table, he looked up at her with a calm smile. "I'll have the cheapest item on your menu," he said softly. Lucy blinked, startled. She managed a polite nod. "Of course, sir, coming right up." As she walked away, she couldn't help the flicker of curiosity in her chest. The man's appearance suggested he could order anything: steak, seafood, caviar, but he had chosen the simplest sandwich, a humble grilled cheese, priced at $3.75. In the kitchen, Lucy prepared the sandwich with care. The bread toasted to a golden perfection, the cheese melted just right. Something about the simplicity of it mirrored the quiet dignity in the man's eyes. When she carried it to the table, placing it carefully in front of him, he nodded in silent thanks and took a slow, deliberate bite, savoring it as though it were a delicacy. Lucy stepped back, ready to return to her tasks, but then she noticed a subtle trembling in his hands. It wasn't the nervousness of a first-time visitor, no. This was deeper, more private, as if he were carrying a weight the world had never noticed. Before she could react further, a loud thud echoed from the bathroom. Startled, Lucy rushed toward the sound, her heart racing. Inside, she found the man slumped against the wall, pale and sweating, a small paper bag lying beside him. "Sir?" Lucy's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Are you okay?" The man looked up, eyes wide and vulnerable. I didn't want anyone to see this," he admitted, his voice cracking. There was an honesty in it that startled Lucy, a rare glimpse behind the polished exterior, revealing a fragile human being underneath. Curious and concerned, Lucy crouched beside him. She noticed the faint smell of medicine, the bottles clinking gently inside the bag. pills, probably prescription medication, carefully measured. Lucy's mind raced. Here was a man who had everything: wealth, power, status, and yet he was hiding something deeply personal, something he wanted no one to see. "It's okay," Lucy said gently. "You don't have to do this alone." He hesitated, then accepted her support, allowing her to help him to a more stable position. The vulnerability was brief. He straightened his suit, adjusted his tie, and smiled faintly, as if trying to regain control of the situation. But Lucy could see it, the quiet truth that no money could erase the human struggles he faced. Once he was steady, he reached for the sandwich again. "Thank you," he said, his voice quieter now, almost introspective. I think I needed that more than I realized." Lucy nodded, a small warmth spreading in her chest. "Sometimes even a small gesture can make the biggest difference," she said. He ate in silence for a moment, the act of simply enjoying a grilled cheese sandwich, grounding him in a way that money, power, and status never could. The diner hummed with its familiar rhythm, yet something had shifted. The encounter had become more than a simple meal. It was a moment of human connection, a reminder that even the wealthiest among us were not immune to vulnerability. As Lucy returned to the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, she reflected on the irony. A man who could buy anything in the world had chosen the cheapest item, and it was this choice that revealed the deepest truth about him. That small grilled cheese had not only fed his body, but it opened a window into his humanity. And for Lucy, it was a lesson she would not forget. In the quiet of the diner, between the flickering neon lights and the scent of coffee and melted cheese, a silent bond had formed, a connection born not from wealth or status, but from empathy, compassion, and the willingness to see someone as they truly were. And Lucy knew, even as she poured herself a quick cup of coffee, that this story was far from over. There were secrets yet to uncover, lessons yet to learn, and a life that would never be quite the same after a single, simple choice. Lucy stepped back from the table, pretending to attend to other customers, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. There was something magnetic about the quiet man in the gray suit, a paradox of immense wealth and fragile humanity. She poured herself another cup of coffee, the steam curling lazily into the air, and wondered what had driven him to that moment in the bathroom. Clearly, he had been hiding something for a long time, a secret no one would have guessed from the outside. A few minutes later, the man excused himself politely and rose from the booth. He moved slowly toward the door, but then paused and looked over his shoulder at Lucy. "I appreciate your help," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't usually let anyone see this side of me." Lucy smiled gently. "Sometimes the world needs to see the real side, even if it's just for a moment," she replied. He nodded and stepped toward the restroom again, this time carrying a small notebook. Lucy's curiosity nudged her forward. Something about the way he moved, the subtle tension in his shoulders, made her sense that there was more beneath the surface than just a faint illness or medication. She busied herself at the counter, pretending to arrange napkins, when a sudden noise made her glance toward the restroom. A faint rustling, then the unmistakable sound of a notebook dropping onto the tiled floor. Without thinking, she walked over, crouched down, and gently picked it up. The notebook was leather-bound, worn at the edges, and filled with meticulous handwriting. Opening it to the first page, Lucy's eyes widened. The entries weren't about business or wealth. They were about fear, regret, and responsibility. The man had written about mistakes he had made in his life, decisions that had cost him friendships, family, and apparently peace of mind. One entry caught her attention. I wanted everything: power, recognition, success, but I lost sight of what matters. Alone, surrounded by wealth, I realized that money cannot heal the void inside. The world sees a billionaire. Few see a man afraid to be human. Lucy's breath caught. This was more than vulnerability. This was a cry for help, carefully penned but desperate in its honesty. She realized she was holding something incredibly personal, a testament to a hidden struggle that few people could ever comprehend. At that moment, the man reappeared, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and relief. I see you found it," he said quietly. Lucy handed him the notebook without a word. "I did," she said softly, "and I want you to know that it's okay to be human. Everyone has struggles, even those the world thinks have it all." He looked at her, eyes glistening. There was a long pause, as if he were weighing whether to trust her with more than he had ever shown anyone. Finally, he spoke. "You're right. I've spent years hiding this, pretending that everything is perfect, that I'm untouchable. But this moment, your kindness, it's the first time in a long while I've felt seen." Lucy felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Sometimes it only takes one person noticing to remind us we're not alone," she said. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing. I think I've been running from myself, from my mistakes. I built walls around me, thinking they'd protect me. But they've only made the emptiness worse." Lucy nodded, understanding more than she could put into words. The diner, the small tables, the faint scent of coffee, it was a world away. From boardrooms, stock charts, and skyscrapers. And yet here, in the quiet of a fading diner, a billionaire and a waitress were connecting in a way that neither could have anticipated. "Do you want to talk about it?" Lucy asked gently, unsure if she was crossing a line, but compelled to offer comfort. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I lost someone important, my sister. It was an accident, my fault in ways no one will ever know. I've thrown myself into work, into money, thinking it could replace the guilt, but nothing has. Not a single thing." Lucy felt a pang in her heart. She had lost people too, but hearing it from someone who seemed untouchable, someone who could have anything in the world, made it real in a way she couldn't ignore. "I can't fix what's happened," she said softly, "but I can be here now, and sometimes being here is enough to start." He looked at her, gratitude flickering in his eyes. For a moment, the billionaire facade vanished, replaced by a man who was simply human. The tension that had held him together cracked, and he allowed himself to sit down again, shoulders slumping with relief. Lucy returned to her side, offering a small cup of water and a reassuring smile. "It's going to be okay. It's not about forgetting, it's about moving forward, even in small steps." He took the cup, sipping carefully. "Small steps," he repeated, almost to himself. "I've forgotten how to take them." "You haven't forgotten," Lucy said. "You just need someone to remind you. And sometimes that someone shows up in the most unexpected place." He chuckled softly, a sound so rare that Lucy realized how unusual this moment truly was. "A diner," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Of all places," Lucy smiled. "Of all places, yes, but maybe that's the point. Life has a way of surprising us." The two of them sat in quiet understanding, the hum of the diner fading into the background. Outside, the sun filtered through the cracked blinds, painting the room in warm golden light. A sandwich, a cup of water, and a shared moment of vulnerability had turned a simple Tuesday into something neither would forget. It was then that Lucy noticed something else, a faint envelope tucked under the notebook, almost hidden from view. Curiosity tugged at her. Without asking, she picked it up and handed it to him. He looked at it, eyes widening slightly. "I didn't think anyone would ever touch that," he whispered. "It's something personal." Lucy met his gaze. "I understand, but maybe it's time for the right person to know." He nodded slowly, a tear escaping down his cheek. "Maybe you're right," he said, finally allowing himself to believe that trust, kindness, and understanding could exist in a world that often only valued money and power. And in that quiet diner, amid chipped tiles, flickering neon, and the lingering smell of melted cheese, a billionaire realized that sometimes the most valuable discovery isn't a business deal, an investment, or a stock. It's the kindness of a stranger who sees you for who you truly are.